I think I understood very early on that you have to sort of read as much people's work as possible to then gain your own voice. You sort of have that fear that a lot of people have when they get towards the end of their university career and they say, what am I going to do now?
Yeah.
And then for me, there's no better path than sports journalism, really.
Welcome to How to Be a Journalist, a podcast by News Associates. I'm Plamedi Mbungu, and thank you very much for tuning in. I'm a recent university graduate, and I work at News Associates. I'm early in my career, and I need the wisdom from more experienced journalists. So to solve this problem, in every episode, I will dive into conversations with some of the most dedicated and talented journalists from all corners of our industry, asking questions about their careers, successes, and giving you a different view of the person behind the byline. Whether you're an aspiring journalist, a seasoned figure in the newsroom, or just interested in knowing what happens behind the scenes, you're in the right place. Today's guest is Sky Sports digital football journalist and Arsenal correspondent Sam Blitz. After studying French and Italian at the University of St Andrews, Sam took a sports journalism course at News Associates, finishing in 2020. And his journey within the sports journalism industry has seen him go from student media officer to being given a weekly slot on the football show on Sky Sports in a matter of just 5 years. Before taking on his current role, Sam worked as an online sports reporter at Mail Online alongside placements at The Times, 442 and Sportsbeat. In terms of high-profile interviews, his role has led him to interviewing the likes of Mikel Arteta and Cesar Azpilicueta. So, hopefully today we'll have a little bit of an understanding of what makes Sam ticks and why his career has gone in the direction it has today. So here he is today, Sam Blitz. How's it going?
I'm very good. I've just had a great talk with some of the sports journalism training, trying to pass on a bit of pearls of wisdom, if that's such a thing. But really good afternoon here, and thank you for having me on the podcast.
Oh, absolutely no problem at all. It basically kind of just was a little bit of a no-brainer. So my first question for you, and is like in the Q&A that you just had, why did you want to become a journalist? So like, when was that first moment that you're like, that's what I want to do?
Well, I think the journey actually started. It wasn't necessarily journalism that came first. It was a desire to work in sport that was the first sort of inkling towards this career path. So, I did languages at university, and I wasn't the most academic of students. But one thing I did have was a passion for sport, and I think actually in my university holidays, that really showed in terms of my first university summer holiday. I worked at the Wimbledon Championships cleaning toilets, which is very different to what I do now.
Yeah.
But then after that, I was a stadium tour host at the Emirates Stadium for Arsenal, and then I also worked in esports at the FIFA E-World Cup. Gamers playing FIFA or EA Sports FC as it's known now. As a living. So I was always in a sporting environment, and then came the question of, right, which avenue in sport do I want to work in? For me, there's no better path than sports journalism, really, because that's where you get a real insight into sort of behind the curtain of an elite sporting, but also an elite working environment as well that teaches you so many skills. You go to these training grounds and you feel an air of real sort of professional working and professional standards. So yeah, sports journalism was always something that stood out for me, which led me to here at News Associates, and then the career. I'm only 29 years old at the moment, but it's a short career, but the career I have now.
Yeah. And did you ever play any sports like growing up as well that kind of pushed you into wanting to get into sports journalism?
I was football mad.
Yeah,
football absolutely mad. It was just every day of the week. It was either speaking or talking about football, playing it at the weekends. Being part of the school team and the university team. I just loved that environment, and that was sort of the environment where I thrived in the most. Maybe speaking and talking about football, I think that was probably one of the first signs that maybe sports journalism could be a thing. But the funny thing is, I actually wanted to be a teacher when I first went to university. I kind of wanted to be a teacher.
Yeah.
I did my year abroad in Italy, and then where I worked as an English teacher for Italian students, and I realised, I do not have the skills to be a teacher. I don't have the patience at all. So I actually came into the sports journalism route relatively late in my university career. But yeah, for me, it was just all about sport. It had to be about sport. That was where I enjoyed life. And, you know, it's currently an industry where it just doesn't feel like working at all, not one bit.
Yeah, no, of course. I mean, I think the best piece of advice that literally what my mate's dad's told me is that if you find a job that you enjoy, yeah, it literally will never feel like you've worked.
Definitely
Then you're
doesn't.
man.
Still to this day, it doesn't.
Yeah. So you touched a little bit about like playing sports at your university. So that was St Andrews.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like, and we'll touch on the awards that you got whilst at St Andrews in a little bit of time. But yeah, tell me about your experience about going to the university.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up in southwest London, you know, southwest London through and through. I still live there now, but I think I wanted something a little bit different, and you know, I wasn't the most academic, but I always thrived to go to the best sort of university possible. And I was never really good to be Oxbridge or anything like that. I wasn't that academic, but you know, St Andrews was the next best, and I had an unbelievable time there. If you ever have the chance to go, not just for the golf, but just the vibes in the city. I think it's a city. I think it's a city, town, city. The thing is, it's so small. It's only 3 streets long. Yeah. And it's just got this great environment. There's a lovely mix of cultures. Lots of American students, lots of students from Europe, Scottish culture. It's a real hotbed to meet different people. Yeah. And yeah, it opened my eyes to a different sort of group of people, different experiences, and sort of taught me a lot about the world. This is a really wonderful place. Yeah.
And why did you like end up picking the languages that you did? So French and Italian, was it to like maybe help you in a potential journalism career, or yeah?
Well, unfortunately, languages was the only thing I was really good at school. I mean, I was okay at English, was okay at maths and mental arithmetic, and I like my essay writing subjects like history, but languages was a real passion. I was very lucky that I grew up in a family that speaks a lot of languages. I lived in Italy till basically lived in Italy till I was 6 years old, in Rome, and so I always had Italian. I didn't speak Italian because I went to an American school, and you know, we spoke English at home when we lived in Italy. But there was always sort of an Italian culture around me, so I always had that passion for Italian culture and speaking the language, and I actually had the ear for it. Yeah. I could hear someone speaking Italian, and I know the gist, even without learning it at all, even before I learned it. I could just have the gist. And then I'm very lucky that I have a French-speaking grandmother, so we always had French at home. Again, we didn't speak it that much, but when I started learning it, it was just an easier way to sort of, you know, just expand my language. And languages is a really weird thing, because you actually learn so much more about English when you study a different language. So I think sort of my grasp for English and my grasp for mechanics and words like that came from learning languages, and it's such a useful skill as well, not just for holidays and things like that. It's communicating with people and understanding people and you know, practicing speaking to different people in different ways. I think there's so many sort of parallels you can have between languages and journalism. So yeah, French and Italian were sort of cultural sort of aspects that followed me throughout my childhood. Yeah. And then I had a passion for them. And I think that's really, really important when you're studying, that you have a passion for certain things and for certain cultures. And so French and Italian was a no-brainer for me for a university degree.
Yeah. And has there ever been times like in your journalism career that being able to speak those 2 languages have really like, you know, put you in a good situation?
Surprisingly, most days. Obviously, I operate a lot in the English language, but you know, there's always a moment in the newsroom where someone somewhere will ask, "Does anyone speak French? Does anyone speak Italian?" Yeah. Bang, my hand goes up.
There you are. Yeah.
And I'm actually surprisingly, very few people in our office speak French, Italian. Actually, very few people in this country speak a modern language. I wouldn't say it's a dying art, but it's definitely not as popular as some of the key skills that people do degrees in. So, yeah, I think languages is so important. And like I said, there's so many parallels between communicating with people and you know that you can take between languages and journalism as well, for sure.
Yeah, like I was actually thinking about that when I was researching you as well. That like I kind of wish that I did that at university, because obviously, as you already know, I did my BA in journalism, but obviously I've ended up at News Associates, so things haven't played out too badly.
It's brilliant.
All. Yeah, but I feel like being able to have a couple more languages that I could write journalism in would be fantastic. So I know a couple more languages, but those are only just conversational because my family are from different places.
Yeah.
They're from Congo.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
And you know, this week for even, I wrote a piece for Sky Italy.
Yeah.
I wrote a piece in Italian, and okay, it wasn't the most perfect piece of work I've ever done because it's in a different language, and I actually realised when I was writing it, I haven't written a long piece of text like that in a different language since my degree because a lot of it becomes orally. But then when I interviewed different types of people in different languages, a couple of weeks ago I spoke to Carlos Baliba at Brighton, who's one of the up and coming stars in the Premier League.
Yeah, of course.
But I get to speak more and actually get more out of him because we don't have a translator who's going to cut the interview short by half because of the timings and things like that.
Yeah, of course.
So I actually get more out of the experience. Our organisation gets more out of the experience when you speak foreign languages and you get more content and you get better answers and it's a skill that actually very few people have, and if other people want to go interview these players and they can't speak the language, well then they might not have as good a piece. So that's one of the big plus points of speaking languages for sure.
Yeah, and you touched a little bit about your time living in Italy up until 6, and then you also spent a year like obviously in uni in the Latina region. Like, how was that? And did I even say Latina right? Is it Latina?
Latina, exactly. In the same way. It was a brilliant experience because it took me right out of my comfort zone. That was a real first opportunity in my life where I went and lived somewhere that was so different. And Latina is a city based in between Rome and Naples. Yeah. So and it was a city made famous because Mussolini was basically built it, and the town hall is in the shape of an M for Mussolini. It was a fantastic place, and I got a season ticket at the Serie B club.
Oh yeah.
And I think they got relegated in there last season because of financial insecurities. So I guess classic Italian football. But it was a great experience. Like I said, I worked as an English teacher, and I did a course where basically I worked as an English teacher for about 12 hours a week, and the rest of my time was just left for travelling. So that was a great opportunity to travel around Europe. I went to so many football games in Italy. I went to one of the best games was Roma against Napoli at the Stadio Olimpico, where I think Mohamed Salah was playing for Liverpool, and I think Dries Mertens was at the top of his game at Napoli, and it was a real sort of top of the table clash. And then I flew to Spain because I could, and I went to see El Clasico, and it was the game when Lionel Messi scored in the last minute and he held his shirt up.
Oh, not
that was just again. So I've been very, very lucky with the experiences I've had, and learning languages sort of can propel those opportunities really, because it gives you the opportunity to go see different people, go see different parts of the world, go see different bits of football and understanding different fan culture. Like when I went before that game at El Clasico at the Santiago Bernabeu, it was I went to have lunch before the game. Like, how many people actually have a sit down sort of traditional Spanish lunch before a game? We don't. We sometimes go to the chippy and things like that, but it's not really part of the culture. Just seeing that and opening that was a great. And I think it added to a little bit of football education. I like to pride myself on my football knowledge as a football journalist, and those experiences help for sure.
Yeah, no, of course. And so we'll take it a little bit back to your time at uni as well, when you're like getting a little bit of experience in journalism, and how that segued into you like coming to News Associates. So you worked as student media officer for the St Andrews football team. Yeah. How was that, and how did that prepare you for your later career?
Well, like I said, I went off to Italy, to Latina, thinking, this would be a great experience for me being a teacher. Yeah. Because I wanted to be a teacher. And then when I realised I didn't have the patience, you sort of have that fear that a lot of people have when they get towards the end of their university career and they say, what am I going to do now? Yeah. What on earth is next? And then, like I said, I looked at my CV and I had all these experiences working in sport, and then I realised maybe I should just write about sport. Yeah. Because I was I loved my degree. My teaching was great, and French and Italian tutors were brilliant, but didn't really have that passion for it. And I kept sort of producing pieces of work for my degree and going, God, I wish I could write something that actually really, really gripped me. And then I thought, okay, why don't I start writing for various sort of websites and publications and things like that? But then, you know, I think I was about 15 or 16, and I met Hazel Irvine, the BBC Sport presenter. She does the snooker, she's brilliant. And she went to St Andrews as well. And just as a weird coincidence. And I sort of asked her, like, out of curiosity, how do you get into that sort of thing? And she said her first piece of writing was producing netball match reports for the University of St Andrews netball team.
Oh, okay. And so from producing like netball articles, from that point onwards, it kind of just made her understand, like, oh, okay, if I'm doing something on the lines of this, then maybe why not like do that full time? For me,
it was a no-brainer. It was a no-brainer to sort of get involved in the football club and produce content. I sort of tried to work as sort of like a comms, not a comms officer necessarily, but a media officer, producing content. Doing interviews with freshers, for example, to try and convince freshers to come to pre-season training, and sort of using it as a marketing tool, producing match reports. And then it got me thinking about audience and, right, who's looking at this content, who's looking at the Instagram channels, the Twitter channels, the websites, things like that. And it slowly became apparent that people's parents were really interested. Of course, St Andrews is northeast Scotland. People have been travelling far and wide to attend the university, and they leave families sometimes not halfway around the world, especially those people from the States. So why don't we create a match day experience for parents, and then have like team lineups, and so they can follow their child and, you know, follow their kids playing football at university, and then do match reports, and then do live blogging on Twitter and things like that. It really gave me a real kick. Starting to content creation and ideas, and bring ideas to the table, and you know, also working with the women's football club as well. So having the women's football club had a media officer as well. So that was working with different people and working a team and working as a committee. And it gave me a real kick, and it sort of was the first confirmation that, okay, I can actually do something good. I can create good content. And then it just went from there, and I took that into my writing about professional sport, and it gave me a real grounding before coming here.
And now that works as a decent segue, as the summer before you joined the sports journalism course at News Associates, you were very busy that summer. So tell us a little bit more about what you were up to.
Yeah, I worked in sports marketing for a company called Revolution, and they did a lot of work representing brands in sport. So whether that be Rolex, who would sponsor various golf tournaments in the tennis, or various data companies involved with British rowing and in areas like that. And it was sort of, you know, selling, you know, products, but also doing social media and getting access to that. You then also work with journalists in order to produce content. Which gave me a real insight into how stories are made sometimes, but also how journalists interact, how they email, how they communicate, and that was a really great grounding as well. And it was a really great summer where I picked up a lot of skills, and that's definitely a part of the journey that I look back on with a lot of fondness and a lot of. It was sort of like the introduction to the industry before coming here, so it made me settle into News Associates a little bit better, knowing how journalists operate and knowing the mindset and knowing the environment, for sure.
Yeah. Okay, and then with that, tell me about your time at News Associates. Obviously, it's always going to sound like a little bit of a shameless plug, for obvious reasons, but how was it?
It was a really great year.
Yeah.
You know, the people I went to the course with, I'm still in touch with, and I actually, in some cases, I still work alongside them, and that's really great to see, and it's great vindication of that. But it was I started here in September 2019, and I was due to finish in May 2020, and I think some of your listeners will work out where this story is going. But yeah, February 2020 and March 2020, the whole world going into lockdown, the whole sports journalism industry stops. Stops dead. Sport is cancelled because of COVID. News and sports desks are halved in two, and grad schemes and job openings are just shut. People are trying to, you know, move people on rather than bring people into the business. So it was a really really difficult time. Now, thankfully, I had done a little bit of work beforehand in getting myself good work experience placements. Firstly at the Times for 10 weeks, and then around about the middle of November, end of November, I sort of switched to the Mail Online, which was a fantastic, which was a fantastic journey really, because I came in as 1 day a week, and then within the next, I don't know, year and a bit, I become a full-time member of staff, but via a very weird, crazy route. But yeah, the course here was great. It gave me it gave me a real insight into what the industry was like, because actually the course isn't necessarily like lectures and seminars and things like that. It's a newsroom. It operates like a newsroom. You produce deadlines and you produce content, and you're having editorial discussions, and you're doing live blogs, and it's a fantastic along my journey, I think you have to make certain decisions in your career. I think this coming here was one of the best decisions I made, for sure.
No, of course. And then coming off the course, then you obviously returned to to Mail Online. Like, how did you go about getting onto the grad scheme? Was it a grad scheme?
It wasn't a grad scheme, no.
It wasn't, no.
I went from work experience to freelance to full time.
Okay.
Which,
help me get my head around that.
Okay, so as part of this course in News Associates, you have Wednesdays off to go and find work experience for a day, and you can do that 1 day a week. So I did 1 day a week at the Mail Online, and then I remember I got my first paycheck as a freelancer at the end of February 2020. And then a week later, everything goes into lockdown. So then 1 day a week, shift-wise, actually became 1 day a month, which caused a bit of anxiety really, because you're thinking, wow, I've got this great experience at News Associates, and I've got all this great body of work behind me, but now there's no job openings and sports cancelled. So what on earth am I going to do? I get a call from one of the editors saying, unfortunately, there's no shifts on sports. However, there is the opportunity to work 5 shifts a week on the news desk, because they're short. They're really short. Everyone's talking about COVID. Everyone's talking about Boris Johnson and Dominic Cummings and things like that, where actually the news desk need cover to cover the everyday stories that appear on the website. And they said, would there be something that interests you? And I looked at the options available. There was no other options, no other job openings, and I took it. And that was a fantastic experience. 5 days a week, sometimes even more than that, because remember, we were in lockdown. There was nothing really. It wasn't really much of a personal life or a thing. We couldn't do much. We couldn't really leave the house even.
Of course.
5 night shifts a week, 5 p.m. till 2 a.m. and helping with the Mail Online's coverage and covering some really great stories. The Dominic Cummings one was one that broke when I was on shift there, and that was a brilliant experience working, having those editorial discussions, and it really gave me a grounding. But I had to do a little bit of news journalism before then going back to sport. So when the Premier League opened again, suddenly sport was short again. So then 5 shifts a week on news became 5 shifts a week on sports. And then suddenly I felt like I was kicking off a career in sports journalism. So 5 shifts a week in sort of like a perma-lancer situation, and then that eventually became a full-time contract. I think that was in March 2021.
So then I'm interested I'm going to ask you for both parts of your time at Mail Online. So when you were working on the news desk, how was that? And was there a specific story that you worked on that really stuck with you and changed the way that you look at journalism?
Well, the experience working on news was great because it was really out of my comfort zone. The only other bit of news journalism I'd ever done, was we had the 2019 general election during our time at News Associates. And I went to the Richmond Park Counts, which was Zach Goldsmith's, when he lost his seat, and it was a brilliant experience working on that evening, but I didn't feel comfortable doing it. Didn't really feel, I was trying to produce a news politics story in a sports journalist mindset. It was,
of course.
There are comparisons, politics and sport, but it's never. But they're really very, very different. So that was really fascinating. I was on the desk when Dominic. There were 2 parts of the Dominic upcoming story. When he broke lockdown rules once on that first evening, and then he apologised the next morning, or Boris Johnson apologised the next morning, and then the news came out that he'd done it a second time. And I was on the news desk both those days, and it was just absolutely fascinating hearing the editorial process, the editorial conversation. Yeah, calling up the Downing Street press office was a real sort of, strange scenario that I had to do, and and getting the sort of like the no comments and the things like that, and then sort of that was when I felt like a real journalist working on those stories. So yeah, those 2 evenings stand out really, really well. But it basically taught me, that whole experience, that you have to expect change no matter what happens. Sometimes life can throw you in a completely different direction, that but it gives you sort of like a cloak of adaptability, which is so useful in the industry nowadays, dealing with different people, dealing with different circumstances. And yeah, it's a real fantastic time.
Yeah. And then how about your time with the sports desk?
Yeah, great. I mean, I obviously have a lot to thank them for. They gave me my first full-time job in journalism, and it taught me, the Mail Online website is a real machine, isn't it? It's one of the most popular websites in journalism, and it teaches you a certain type of news story. But again, I had a lot of freedom to sort of write my own things if it got approved by editors. And yeah, the one story that stuck out for me was when I found a French Sunday League player who had basically been trying to blag his way to the professional game by creating fake CVs and doing trials for like Norwich and Swindon, when having basically fraud his way into the building, and he nearly got offered a contract by a Champions League club. He actually got offered the contract, actually, and then the club in Bulgaria who were qualified for the Champions League, they called up PSG, who he claimed to play for, and saying, just to double check this guy, here's who he is, and they said, we've never heard of him before.
Wow.
But that was sort of like my first sort of story where I went, wow, I could actually do a story, and it did really, really well. It did really, really well performance-wise, but then other organisations started reporting the story, and that was a real pinch me moment, and that sort of was the start of a trajectory for me once I'd got my feet in the building, and it was just up from there.
Yeah, very nice. And okay, let's take a little jump outside of journalism for a second. Were there any roles that you did outside of journalism that, like, surprisingly helped you in your career? So, like, you already talked about being a housekeeper at Wimbledon and doing the Arsenal tours as well. Arsenal tours?
Yeah.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, I guess there was a lot of comparison. When I was working at Arsenal, I was sort of working on a freelance stadium tour contract, so that taught me a lot about sort of, working not necessarily difficult hours, but working different shift patterns and working weekends, which is obviously a part of the role at the moment at Sky and that you have to do. Also working through the night as a housekeeper at Wimbledon. Yeah. It almost taught me that no hours are sort of unworkable, if you know what I mean. Yes. You can just work every hour of the day, and life necessarily isn't 9 till 5.
Yeah,
and those two really stand out. But when I was working at the Esports World Cup, it was shown on Sky Sports, and just seeing, I think Laura Woods was presenting the competition that day, and that was just sort of a little insight into how a media operation works, and because it was brilliant. So I think every single little role that you do, I don't think you can underestimate at all when you go through a career progression, especially during university. They add something to you. They sort of like leave a mark on you. So I definitely think do as much as you can during the time you have off from studies and school and things like that, because they do teach you something.
Yeah, no, of course. Like before like finding myself in the opportunity to work this role, like I was working car parking for my local team, which is Luton Town. Yeah. That was fantastic because I met Pelly Relic and Panzu. And with that role, I remember just getting the opportunity just to speak to people, even speak to the players as I'm going like that. Yeah, this way, getting them to sign their name on the form, and that sort of thing as well. And it just those people-facing roles surprisingly will help you in journalism.
100%.
I would have never expected but it does. It works.
If we put it in the environment, yeah, it's for me it's the environment
Yeah.
that really stands out in these roles. It's you take things from people around you. I think as human beings we emulate people around ourselves. So yeah, I definitely think that's a great experience for you. I can imagine.
No, of course that was a lot of fun, and as a because with Pelly, Congolese brother as well.
Yeah,
like, that just
it's a great story as well.
fantastic.
Non-league to Premier League with the same club and
Luton legend. Yeah, so I always like pulling that story out of my hat from time to time.
Yeah, shout out to the Kenny, by the way. That's a great stadium.
It is. It's one of those stadiums, of course. Yeah. It's home. It's the local. But now let's talk Sky.
Yeah.
Let's talk Sky Sports. We talk about all types of things. So, university, your time abroad, your time at Mail Online. But at the moment, you work at Sky Sports. So tell me about your role and what you get up to in the day-to-day.
So I'm part of the digital football editorial team. So we are, I'm in a group of 15 to 20 journalists, football journalists, who are basically responsible for the content on the website and the app. So that could be match reports, news stories, live blogs, features, analysis, colour, videos, everything really. On top of that, I also do a little stint on Sky Sports News, on the football show, normally once a week, sometimes a little bit more, basically doing analysis. And I don't want to call it punditry because I'm not a pundit like a Gary Neville or a Jamie Carragher, having never played the game before. But I do sort of try and provoke conversation and debate through stats and footage and debate and things like that. So that's basically the role at Sky, and I've been doing it for 2.5 years now, and it's a great place to work.
Like, does the responsibility of having such a role and to have been able to get to that point so quickly is very impressive, I must say as well.
Thank you.
Yeah. So does it ever get daunting? Is there ever any times that you doubt yourself, or is it just like you got the mindset? You're like, I deserve this.
No, I'm very, very lucky that I have the editors and the support to be myself in this role, and to put a lot of myself into it, because I think you have to when I'm part of the podcast team. I do Sky Sports News. I think you have to. I think you can't be a robot. You can't be a machine that puts stuff out there. You have to add some colour and a bit of flair to it. Yeah, that's basically what I try to do. And there's no pressure. I think Sky has a reputation. It's people turn to Sky a lot to consume their football, and therefore you have to meet certain standards. But those standards are no different in any sort of mainstream media. Having worked at the Mail, I know the experience of working for a big organisation, and it's just a fantastic place to work. Not just the work, but the work-life balance as well. And the access available at Sky and the opportunities you get for growth make it a real worthwhile experience. Yeah.
And obviously, you're an Arsenal fan, as we spoke about a little bit in the intro. Like, how is it like getting the opportunity to report on your team so often?
Yeah, recently have a sort of more of an Arsenal focus on reporting alongside my colleague Nick Wright, who is excellent, by the way. You should definitely turn to his content. Yeah. But it's great because the industry is always changing. I think people might. The thing is, I don't like calling myself an expert, but I think people want people with insight into the audience, insight into the conversation and the debate. And I think we've seen that with recent projects in other organisations, such as the Athletic, for example, who have specific club reporters. I would never ever call myself an Arsenal expert, but I think I have a lot of knowledge about the club, and to peek behind the curtain is just a fantastic experience for sure.
Because obviously they're your team. You've been researching them, going on their Wikipedia page since you were basically a kid. Yeah. So when you get to that point and you combine that with your journalism training, like, it kind of just makes sense. So with that, when you go on the air, does that ever get daunting, and how do you prepare yourself?
Preparation is just so key. It's research. Yeah. It is research. If you know what you're going to talk about and you know it down to a T, then actually when you get up there and the bright lights are there and there's someone in your ear talking to your producer, then it's no problem at all, because you know what you're saying, you know what you're talking about, you've been through it in your head so many times, what you want to talk about. You know, I'm very lucky that I have a big screen up there on Sky Sports News where I can almost use it as a prompt. And also the beauty of what I do is that I get to take a lot of ideas to the show and then say, listen, I want to talk about this today. I want to talk about these stats. I want to talk about this player. I want to talk about this talking point. So it's my idea. It's something I can control. It's something I can, you know, present with the full knowledge that I know I believe in it and I know what I'm talking about. So that helps. Yeah, it's preparation. It's preparation. If the times where I felt uneasy on air are the times where I don't really know what I'm talking about, or not what I'm talking about, but haven't prepared as well.
Yeah, of course.
So that's the best part of the broadcasting. Taking an idea, owning the opinion, and then showing why I believe it through stats and big screen and data.
It's the whole dropping into the level of your training sort of thing. Obviously, it's not football, but there are if you prepare for something and you train for it, it just kind of comes out in your performance. Yeah. Yes.
100%. Like muscle memory and things like that. And I'm very lucky to have a good memory. So things pop into my head all the time.
Yeah.
And then live TV, sometimes, you know, when your mind is scrambled, that's when it becomes difficult. But when an idea pops into your head and talking point, saying, do you know what, I can talk about this for the next 20 seconds. So it's brilliant. It's a brilliant, it's a brilliant sort of thought process. And sometimes I sort of look back because I watch myself back a lot, because you have to as part of the learning process.
Yeah, of course.
And I look back and I go, did I really just do that and say that and just do that with everything going on around me? So that's a really nice part of it.
So how do you also keep focused as well when it comes to talk back as well?
Yeah.
Because trying to hear yourself think, but then hearing another voice in your ear as well, how does that go?
It's because before I moved to Sky, I'd never been in front of a camera before, so it was another example where I was taken out of my comfort zone. But you just have to work out when someone's talking to you and when someone's talking to the overall production. So a lot of the talk back in the ear is camera angles. So we're switching to camera 3 in 3, 2, 1. That helps me out, because then I know when I'm in shot and I'm out of shot. Yeah, of course. But then sometimes they say, Sam, can you just take 2 steps forward? The most difficult thing is the countdown, because at the end of every hour you have to finish at 5:2. So the appropriate time for adverts is available, and sometimes you're in the middle of a point and someone is saying 1 minute till stop talking. That's when the whole show has to stop talking. So you have to give the presenter time to then sort of do an outro and wrap up the hour effectively. Yeah. So then a minute to go, 50 seconds to stop talking, 40 seconds to stop talking. Yeah. Then when you get to sort of 30, you have to sort of wrap it up to give the presenter as much time, because if you then get to 5 seconds to stop talking, then people are really shouting at you. But no, it's great. It's something I've definitely got a lot better on, and the producers are really, really great at giving advice. They know it's something that is very, very strange to do. But they're very, very patient, and they're great, the producers and the presenters as well.
Has there ever been a specific situation where maybe you just were a couple seconds too late and you left it really tight?
Yeah, there was one time I left the presenter 4 seconds. Rob Whitten, by the way, Sky Sports News legend, but he managed to do it, and he managed to wrap everything up in 4 seconds. I mean, he just said, right, up next is Lunchtime Live. And that's... Yeah, but again, it's part of the learning process. And, I started that in January 2024, so January of this year, and I'm still sort of learning. So it's still a learning process.
Yeah. And the next question I have was one that one of my colleagues has posed to you, and also did the same to Chris Reedy. In terms of Sky Sports and how things are changing and remaining relevant in sports media, because Sky Sports News has been around for years, and it's basically almost like the establishment. As times have changed, there are more influencers coming onto the show and on TikTok and all these new social media platforms. So what is your thought process when it comes to Sky Sports remaining relevant and moving with the times?
Thinking about the audience. It's the most important skill you have in journalism, and it's not just relevant to Sky Sports, it's relevant to everywhere. Think about what your audience consumes, think about what your audience is interested in. And in terms of influencers, if they're interested in influencers, and there are some influencers out there that can help your content. Why not use them? You know, it's a great opportunity to combine old school journalism, which is relevant to a certain audience, and then the up and coming, you know, media, which is you know, really popular with young people. And we always talk about the desire to bring in different audiences and to bring in a younger audience to stay relevant, to be the place where everyone comes to for sports content and media and production, but also accepting as well that people use social media platforms more than they do news websites sometimes.
Yeah, of course.
So how do you then incorporate social media and video into what we do? These are conversations we have almost every single day at Sky, where we really try to, you know, think about the ever-growing nature of not just the industry, but also our audience as well. Because, you know, 5-10 years ago, it probably changed with TikTok and other areas, but in 5-10 years ago, it might change again. You never know.
Of course. And can you tell me a little bit more about some of the high-profile interviews that you've done that you've had to like really psych yourself up for? So you interviewed Mikel Arteta not too long ago.
Yeah, so that was about 2 seasons ago. And that was a great moment in my career. But and you know, I've interviewed so many other people as well through our broadcast access at Sky. A couple of weeks ago, I spoke to Fabian Hertzler and did a nice tactics piece with him, which was another nice career moment for me. You know, Cesar Spilicueta is someone was the first one I did actually, I think, when he was Chelsea captain, and he just announced he was staying at Chelsea despite his contract running down and interest from Barcelona. So I think we got a good interview out of that. Bruno Guimaraes as well, Newcastle I've spoken to, but I think I gain more joy out of the self-sourced interviews, not just the interviews that we get through Sky. You know, doing sort of like, you know, profile players, speaking to former coaches and getting a profile on a transfer target, for example. That's a really, really nice one. You know, I self-sourced an interview with Alicia Lehman. You know, talking about, you know, adapting to your audience, really getting a one-on-one exclusive interview in the Sky Sports building, because we managed to host her at Sky, with the most followed female footballer in the world on WSL and on TikTok and Instagram. Of course. That was another nice moment as well, because it was a really, really popular piece because of our audience, and it probably might have attracted a few more different people to our platform. So lots of really, really nice self-sourced interviews as well, and just trying to, you know, build the contact book up, because like I said, I'm only 29, so I've still got a lot of learning to do and a lot of people to meet in the industry, so to speak.
Of course. Okay, so with that, like we've spoken a lot about your career, and I feel like I have a decent understanding on how you've got to the place where you are at right now. But now it's time to go into the questions that really matter. The most important ones, the ones that our listeners will take home with them and let them understand Sam Blitz, the man behind the byline and the man on the TV. So the first one is, are you an extrovert or are you an introvert?
Oh, I love these quick fire questions. I think I'm a little bit of both. I think I do have my personality is actually quite shy. People might not see that on the TV, people might not see that, but sometimes I do have a shy personality sometimes. But I think in this industry, especially when you work in broadcast, I think you have to express yourself in a certain way. So I would say a little bit of both, but it depends who I'm with, really.
Any nicknames?
Well, having a surname like Blitz, it sort of opens up, you know, a lot of my close friends call me Blitzy, but I think my work colleagues call me Blitzer, Blitzinator, things like that. But take your pick.
Like, I have to say, it's just a really cool surname.
Yeah, it's a good byline name. People say that a lot.
Sam Blitz, it just kind of works. You see
2 syllables, it works.
It's easy. It's clean. Are you a night owl or an early riser?
Early riser, every time. You know, as part of this job, you work late nights, but the early starts are quite regular. Early riser for sure.
Who would be your dream interview if you haven't interviewed them already?
I have to do someone I haven't interviewed already, because that's not.
Of course, it won't make it too easy.
I think given he's recently signed a new contract, I think Pep Guardiola, just before he leaves England, would be great, because I love this tactical writing, and I think, in my opinion, managers don't want to answer the same old questions they hear every time in interviews. They sometimes actually would like to be asked things about tactics and vision of the game and things, you know, a lot of different things. So I'd love to one day have a sit down with Pep and have a really nerdy conversation about football.
Yeah, of course.
I don't know how good that piece would be, but we'll have a nerdy chat.
Because you could just imagine how his brain works. Like his whole football mentality is just out of this world. Like he'll have one tactic one week, and the next week he's like, no, forget everything we did last week. Forget it.
I'd love to. Yeah, like I've said a few times about peeking behind the curtain. I'd love to have sort of peek inside his brain a little bit and just get a few nuggets, because I think that's something journalists can maybe learn from, actually developing a bit more of an understanding of what's happening, because the game, you're talking about the changing nature of journalism, the changing nature of football is changing all the time. Yeah. And, you know, perhaps the old school journalism of man kicks ball into the net is maybe a bit different now. So, to understand that side of it is interesting.
And let's say after this podcast recording, you have the opportunity to go and interview Pep Guardiola. What song are you playing to prepare for said interview?
Oh, I don't know. I'm not really a hype man, really.
Because you could go the hype route, but you could go the very chill route. Like, it really depends on
I would probably just listen to a podcast, really.
Yeah?
I'd probably just listen to a podcast on the way up.
Yeah?
Because sometimes the last minute, when I prepare for an interview, I'm on the way to the interview, sometimes listen to another interview with that person, and then maybe take a little bit of nugget from that.
Yeah, of course.
I'm not really a hype up or a cool down person. I'm sort of like in the zone.
Yeah, of course.
Even if I'm on the other side of the country heading towards the interview, I'm sort of like in the zone. So.
Yeah. And okay, let's say after listening to what podcast would you listen to as well?
Well, of course, I listen to the Sky Sports Essential Football podcast. No, I don't know really. Just a podcast with that individual is either talking or maybe if it was an interview with Pep, I would listen to a Man City Forum podcast and probably listen to that.
Yeah, and okay, let's say after the interview with Pep, you have the opportunity to make him a meal. What are you cooking, Mr. Guardiola?
Oh well, I lived in Italy until I was 6, and obviously I spent a lot of time my year abroad. I love cooking Italian food.
Yeah, of course.
I love cooking Italian food. Probably pasta with a bit of guanciale. Guanciale is it's the pig cheek, so it's like bacon, but not bacon. I think a lot of Italians would like pancetta, basically. It's like a little bit different to pancetta, but it's pasta like that, tomato sauce. That's my go-to. I probably have it about at least 2 times a week. Yeah. That's my speciality. That's my go-to.
That sounds absolutely amazing. I'm not going to lie to you.
Thank you.
And
you're welcome to come around anytime.
You know what? I'll be happy to come. And what are you currently watching TV show-wise at the moment?
Day of the Jackal.
Oh,
Eddie
okay.
Redmayne.
Yeah.
Sky. I know there's a bit of bias with the Sky programming there, but
that's fine. Yeah.
No, me and my other half are watching it at the moment, and it's very, very good.
Yeah. Any books you're reading at the moment?
Books, God, you're going to think I'm a football nerd, but I'm actually reading Alexander Zinchenko's autobiography at the moment. That came out about 2 or 3 weeks ago. And again, I've interviewed Alex actually, and he's a good talker. And I thought, why not read the book? If he's a good interviewee, then he'll probably be a good, author in terms of an autobiography. So I thought it'd be good.
And final one, have you ever been to any concerts? And if so, what was your favourite one?
Yeah, I have been to a few concerts. I'm not a huge music aficionado. Favourite one, I'll give you 2. Ed Sheeran at Wembley.
Nice.
And Paolo Nutini at Alexandra Palace.
Oh, very nice.
Yeah.
And the actual, very, very final question. One word to describe your career as of right now. First word that comes to mind.
Amazing.
Amazing. Okay.
Amazing.
Thank you very much, Sam Blitz, for coming on to the How to Be a Journalist podcast. I've been Plamedi Mbungu, and thanks everybody for tuning in.